We're going to be in Samuel chapter 3, 2 Samuel chapter 3. The text is going to be on the screen here in a moment as we read through it. But first, an opening question. Any of you like movies that have revenge? You know, yes. I think that's pretty much standard. You know, especially when the good guys get the revenge. Why do we like them? Why do we like? We want to see people what they get. And sometimes and then some. You know, we don't want. Sometimes if it's really bad, we want them to get revenge, but then on top of that, even more. We really like that. We like to see the bad guys get what's coming to them. That's just kind of something to get us thinking before we get into our text. I also, before we want to get into our text, I want to just quickly give some context. Most of it's out of earlier in chapter 3, because really we're picking up right in the middle of a passage. So I just want to briefly go over some context here. After Saul's death, so after Saul had died, who had been anointed king of Israel? Who had been anointed king of Israel? Not king of Judah, but who had been anointed king of Israel? Yeah, Ishbosheth. I just wanted someone to say it that way. I know how to pronounce it in a minute. So thanks, Jeff. Now, and so Ishbosheth, he's the one who became king. Now, who helped kind of get him in that position of being king? Do you remember? Yes, he did. Abner, son of Ner, and remember, Abner had been a commander of Saul's army. And so he's the one that really kind of got Ishbosheth in the role he was. Now, who had the tribe of Judah anointed? David. So Judah had anointed David as king, and then the rest of Israel, the rest of the tribes of Israel had Ishbosheth as king. And so as Todd talked about last week, there were tension between the two. And so there were two armies kind of going back and forth at each other. And in the one battle that we read about earlier in 2 Samuel chapter 2, there was someone who died, someone important who died. Do you remember who killed Joab's brother? Abner. So the same one who's pushed Ishbosheth into in the role of thing. He had also killed Joab, and that's going to be important to our text tonight. Now, it's also important to know and understand that Abner was Saul's cousin. So Abner was related to Saul, and he'd been commander of Saul's army really from early on. So we know he'd been important to Saul's reign, and now Ishbosheth, and so he was been important, and that's going to be influential in tonight too. And we also learned that David was having children, and David's army was having more success than Ishbosheth's army was. And so really we kind of, the kingdom of Saul was kind of going this way, and David and his kingdom was kind of rising. And then the last bit of context, and then we're going to get into our text, but the last bit of context, there was also tension between Ishbosheth and Abner. So Abner had really kind of put him to where he was, but there was some tension there. There was an accusation that was levied against Abner, and I watched Todd. I wasn't here last week. I had 3 weddings in 8 days. So I wasn't here, but I went back and watched part of Todd of it. But he talked about this because you remember what Abner was accused of by Ishbosheth? Yeah, sleeping with one of his stats. Yeah, and so Todd alluded to it. That Abner never really denied it, but the text never necessarily tells us he did it. But honestly, the result of the accusation was the same no matter whether he did it or not. The result was the same, because this is going to be on the screen. Because here's what Abner vowed after he was accused of this. In 2 Samuel chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, we read, "May God," and this is Abner speaking, "May God strike me, even kill me, if I don't do everything I can to help David get what the Lord has promised him. I'm going to take Saul's kingdom and give it to David." And so that's kind of where we are going into our text. Abner's been slighted by Ishbosheth, and and he's going to be on a mission, and we're going to see how this all interacts and unfolds. And so we are going to get into our text this evening, and we're going to start out reading the verses 12 through 21 of chapter 3. 2 Samuel chapter 3, starting in verse 12. Then Abner sent messengers to David, saying, "Doesn't the entire land belong to you? Make a solemn pact with me, and I will help turn over all of Israel to you." "All right," David replied, "but I will not negotiate with you unless you bring back my wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come." David then sent this message to Ishbosheth, Saul's son: "Give me back my wife, Michal, for I bought her with the lives of 100 Philistines." So Ishbosheth took Michal away from her husband, Palti, son of Laish. Palti followed along behind her as follows Barim, weeping as he went. Then Abner told him, "Go back home." So Palti returned. Meanwhile, Abner had consulted with the elders of Israel. "For some time now," he told them, "you have wanted to make David your king. Now is the time. For the Lord has said, I have chosen David to save my people Israel from the hands of the Philistines and from all of their other enemies." Abner also spoke with the men of Benjamin. Then he went to Hebron to tell David all that the people of Israel and Benjamin had agreed to support him. When Abner and 20 of his men came to Hebron, David entertained them with a great feast. Then Abner said to David, "Let me go and call an assembly of all of Israel to support my lord the king. They will make a covenant with you to make you their king, and you will rule over everything your heart desires." So David sent Abner safely on his way. And so here we see where that tension between Ishbosheth and Abner ended up. Is Abner, he promised, "Hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to make David king." And so here he's putting that plan into action. And so he's going to get with all of Israel to try to make David the king. Now, how does Abner first contact King David? Messengers, yeah. He didn't go himself. He didn't go himself. He sent some messengers. And what was the message? What did he tell him? Yeah, I want to make a deal. I want to make you king. I want to make you king. Now, there are probably many reasons, but why did he go through a messenger and not going directly? Why might he not have gone right in and marched into Hebron and said, "Hey, David"? Well, it could be that, but remember, they were pretty much at odds. They were, because Abner he'd been over kind of commanding Saul's army during most of the reign. And what was Saul doing for several years before he died? Yeah, he was trying to kill David. And so it's very well Abner, was one of the ones who was hunting David down. So that might be why, but so he sends the messengers. Now David agrees. We're told in here David agrees, but he has a stipulation. Now I believe there could have been several possible reasons for the stipulation of why he wanted Michal, which remember he was his first wife through Saul. Yes, first wife through Saul. So there might be several reasons. And remember whenever Saul took her away from David and gave him to Paltiel. But there could have been several reasons David put this stipulation in there. One of them might have been love. I mean, he might have loved her. I don't know that. Part of it might have been, kind of seeing her as a possession. Hey, she was mine. She was taken from me. Might have been that. It might have been like a test to see if Abner would come through, because I'm sure this took some doing to get Michal taken from her husband. So it might have been that, and just to see if Abner could be trusted, if he had the pull or clout. It might have been thinking, okay, maybe if I get Michal back, I can have a child through her and kind of unite the kingdom. And so it'll be I'll have a child through the house of Saul, and we'll be united that way. But instead of, I think it's interesting, but instead of waiting on Abner to come through, what does David do kind of on his own? Yeah, he contacts, Ishbosheth himself. And what does Ishbosheth do? Yeah, he does it. He comes through. He comes through. Now again, we don't know the exact reason why Ishbosheth granted this request. Could have been multiple. Maybe he thought, hey, if I do this, maybe it'll end the hostility between us. Maybe this will, because remember, for a while, David was running, and Saul was kind of doing the chasing in his army. But now they were at the point, and who was winning the battles now? Yeah, so Saul, and the house of Saul was kind of going down, and so maybe he thought this would end the hostility. Plus, what had just happened between Ishbosheth and his military leader? They just had a falling out, and Abner was powerful. Remember, Abner was the one that got Ishbosheth into power. And here this powerful military commander saying, hey, I'm going to do everything in my power to take it from you and give it to David. And so it might have been any of that. But regardless of Ishbosheth's reasons here, Abner was working behind the scenes and really behind the back of Ishbosheth. And he had gained support, because he tells us here he had gained the support of all the elders of Israel. And so remember, David already had Judah. And now he's gathering all of that. And so that's important. Now the tribe of Benjamin is singled out here. And this is more bonus material, because I wouldn't have told you. I wouldn't have known this. Why do you think the importance of Benjamin's being singled out here, that they were on board? Pardon? That's right. Saul's house is from Benjamin. And so for the Benjamites, for the people from the tribe of Benjamin, to go with David means kind of turning their back on their own people. They're like, because Saul and Ishbosheth were from the tribe of Benjamin. And so now, getting them on board pretty much, kind of seals the deal. You have everybody on board. So that's important to understand that. And so in our text, we have, Abner and David meet. And from the text, it seems like it goes very well. Very well. It tells us that there was a feast. And the feast probably happened after the agreement. I'm sure they had to come in and have some meeting, but then they come together and they have this feast. And we have to remember that they had just had a battle not too long before this. So they were enemies, but now they apparently worked things out, and so they were together on that. And so it seems like there's a peaceful departing. It says in our text that David sent him away with peace. And so Abner's going back. He said, I've already got everybody on board, but let me go back, and we'll get everybody together, and we'll make this happen. And we're going to unite the kingdom under David. And kind of where our text ends right there, it seems like this is going to happen. They've worked out the deal. They've worked out all the agreements, and we're going to go back, and we're going to make this a deal. We're going to unite the kingdom. That's what it sounds like there. But if you've read ahead, or you know the story, that it doesn't quite go that way yet. All right, any comments, questions on this first? I get a drink to Dr. Enough if anybody says anything. I'll still take a drink. All right, let's continue in our text and read verses 22 through 30. But just after David had sent Abner away in safety, Joab and some of David's troops returned from a raid, bringing much plunder with them. When Joab arrived, he was told that Abner had just been there visiting the king and had been sent away in safety. Joab rushed to the king and demanded, "What have you done? What do you mean by letting Abner get away? You know perfectly well that he came to spy on you and find out everything you're doing." Joab then left David and sent messengers to catch up with Abner, asking him to return. They found him at the well of Sirah and brought him back, though David knew nothing about it. When Abner arrived back at Hebron, Joab took him aside at the gateway as if to speak with him privately. But then he stabbed him. He stabbed Abner in the stomach and killed him in revenge for killing his brother Asahel. When David heard about this, he declared, "I vow by the Lord, that I and my kingdom are forever innocent of this crime against Abner the son of Ner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. May the family of Joab be cursed in every generation with a man who has open sores or leprosy, or who walks on crutches, or dies by the sword, or begs for food." So Joab and his brother Abishai killed Abner, because Abner had killed their brother Asahel at the battle of Gibeon. And so here's one of those scenes, some scenes in the Bible I can visualize better than others. And I think this one I can visualize, at least the beginning of it, I can visualize it pretty good. Because, you think about it, Abner and his men had just had this big feast with David. They're really getting ready to go back victorious. Hey, we have cut this deal with David. We're going to unite the kingdom. We're all going to be together. We're going to quit fighting with brothers. We're good. We got this thing whipped. And so they're heading off, and they're happy and joyful because of that. And then here comes, from the other direction, here comes Joab and all his men, and they're coming back to David, and it says they've got a lot of plunder. And at this time in history, there were no tax system or anything like that, at least with the people of Israel. Is before the temple tax and all that other stuff. And so really that's how they lived, was kind of plundering. And we know that, David did a lot of that before here. But so here comes Joab and his men. They're coming back victorious, and they've got all this stuff. And then someone walks up to him and is like, "Joab, guess who was just here? Your enemy. And guess what? David just sent him away in peace." And I can just see Joab. I'd be a little bit mad because of what we're going to find out here in a minute. And so Joab, and he comes in, and remember, this is King David here. He's been anointed king of Judah, and Joab, who's very important to David, he comes in, but he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What have you done?" Because remember, along with being the enemy, and they'd been battling even after Saul's death for 2 years now. So they'd been going head to head battling Abner and all of Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth's. Yeah, thank you. I lost it. Ishbosheth's men against Joab and David's men. They've been battling, and he's an enemy. But also remember, what had Abner done to Joab's brother? Killed him, right? He killed him. But in Abner's defense, did he straight out just go and kill Joab's brother? Do you remember that story? He tried not to. He avoided it at all costs. It starts out, I think, in verse 18, but in 2 Samuel 20, this is Abner. So here sets the scene. Joab's brothers and it says he's fast as a gazelle, I think, and he's chasing Abner down. And Abner's like, "Hey, is that you? Hey, stop! Go fight some of them younger men. Go on." And then in verse 2:20 he says, "Get away from here! I don't want to kill you. How could I ever face your brother Joab again?" And so he didn't really want to do it. Now back to our text. In the situation, David letting Abner go in peace. I think Joab might have had some possibly, truth or suspicion that he was there to spy. Because remember, that's what Joab says. Don't you know what he was here doing? He was here spying on you, okay? And that would kind of make sense. But there's also, so one reason is he killed his brother. Another one, he's saying they're going to spy on you, so that can make sense. There also, I think, could have been some jealousy. Because he was David's kind of head honcho. Joab was kind of the man, with David. And then he comes in and finds out they've had this meeting and worked out this agreement. So there might have been jealousy, because maybe he thought, well, I should have been involved in that. I'm the military leader. I should have been involved in this negotiation. Also, if Abner is now on David's side and an ally of David, what might happen to Joab's power? Yeah, he could go down. Yeah, so there's multiple reasons it could be here. So Joab's coming in there, and he's got a personal grudge against Abner. But then also, hey, I'm your guy. What are you talking to him and making out deals? You should be dealing with me. But here's the thing. What we learn from Joab later, 2 Samuel, I think the main reason here was revenge. I think the main reason Joab was mad and that he let him go was revenge because he'd killed his brother. And so now Joab's gonna kind of make up a little plan here. And so Joab sends a messenger, he sends a messenger to go get Abner to come back. Now we aren't told specifically, but if you were Abner and a messenger come and said, hey, we want you to come back, what might you think? Yeah, probably thought, oh, David's wanting to talk to him, maybe, And so he goes back and he comes, and it says, at the city gate, and it says that Joab kind of got him before he entered the city, really, and that's kind of important too. But before he enters the city, he brings him back there, and here Abner's thinking, okay, I'm going to meet back probably with David, and then he gets pulled aside and murdered. And David's response wasn't too kind to it, was it? No. David's response, he didn't think too much of it, and he makes it clear. He's like, hey, this is not going to be blamed on me and my house. Who does he blame solely, which he should? Joab. And then he invokes a big old curse on it. And if you look at the curse, part of it, when you're oozing sores or leper, what are you? And you're unclean, you're an outcast, or you're an invalid, or may you starve. I mean, he's like, may, and so he brings a curse on him, and he tells them that. Any comments, questions? I don't get a drink. All right, let's finish our text, but we're not going to be done. I got take homes, but we'll finish our text here, 31 through 39. Then David said to Joab and all those who are with him, tear your clothes and put on burlap. Mourn for Abner. And King David himself walked behind the procession to the grave. They buried Abner in Hebron, and the king and all the people wept at his graveside. Then the king sang this funeral song for Abner. I'm not going to sing it. Should Abner die? Should Abner have died as fools die? Your hands were not bound. Your feet were not chained. No, you were murdered, the victim of a wicked plot. All the people wept again for Abner. David had refused to eat anything on the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to eat. But David had made a vow, saying, may God strike me and even kill me if I eat anything before sundown. This pleased the people very much. In fact, everything the king did pleased them. So everyone in Judah and all Israel understood that David was not responsible for Abner's murder. Then King David said to his officials, don't you realize that this great commander has fallen today in Israel? And even though I am the anointed king, these two sons of Zeruiah, Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So may the Lord repay these evil men for their evil deeds. And so here we have some more, really further punishment or kind of rubbing their nose in what they've done. He brought it, he told Joab, may your basically family be cursed. But now, he adds to the punishment of Joab, but also he says to the men associated with Abner's murder. Because, Joab did the actual killing, but someone went and said the message, and I'm sure there was other stuff set up in it because it tells us there were others in the plot. And he commanded them to tear their clothes and really take the position of a mourner. But it was someone that they had killed. And I'm sure they were pretty, knowing what we know of Joab, he was probably pretty happy what he'd done. I don't think there was probably a lot of shame in it. I mean, he did it inside the gate there, and I'm sure it wasn't done in the dark where hiding. I mean, so I'm sure they were kind of happy about it. Because, he had killed his brother and his brothers were with him too. And so in his mind, he probably avenged his brother's death. But instead of being able to gloat about it and maybe even be a hero, because, we know that David and Abner worked out a deal. But, for these other people who had been fighting, you'd had the house of David and those of David who were fighting Saul. There was probably not a lot of love between them. They were probably some animosity. And so, for a lot of them, by killing Abner, the rest of, David's men, but I'm like, yeah, you got him. Good job. But David was like, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. And so now, instead of, again, celebrating it, they're forced to lead the procession of his mourning. And then at the same time, David is at the back. And at this time, the place behind, and your text may say behind the bier, but the person back there would kind of be the chief mourner. It'd be like the one who was really hurt by it would be the one following the body. And so they were out front, mourning and kind of leading it. And then David was behind the body, and he was really mourning. And so this did a couple things. It showed to the people that David really cared about it, and he was taking this seriously. But also it was further separating Joab and the men who helped kill him and David. David was kind of separating himself from that. One of my commentaries said, this whole scene, this funeral march and all that was kind of like we'd see at a president's funeral. I mean, it was kind of laid out, and there was, there was purpose behind a lot of these things. And so, like for us today, it'd be kind of a media moment because a lot of people are going to come out to see this, when they're having this thing, because this is very important dudes. I mean, it's it's King David who's there mourning, but then it's also the commander of all of Israel except for Judah, the commander who was over that, and then the commander. So it had been a big deal, and a lot of people come out. And David's words and actions, I think, were very calculated because, again, he did not want to be associated with this. And so that's important to understand. In verse 33, he was lamenting over Abner dying as a fool. And, for us, a fool, the word of a context of a fool is like a dummy or just someone not very smart. But in the original intent kind of here, the language, it's really someone who acts really disgracefully. So it's someone who's just shameful and would be considered worthless. And so he's like, man, Abner didn't deserve to die that way. And even though Abner's motives might not have been purely honorable, he really didn't deserve to be killed this way. And so David wanted to be sure to clear himself of any guilt. Now thinking about why David wanted to remove himself, there's several possible reasons. Anybody think about reasons for David not wanting to be involved in this? Pardon? Yeah. Abner was that was his ticket. David had been waited. He's been waiting because God, he was anointed, by Samuel. You're going to be king. And then he's had to go through all of Saul and everything he's going. And now here's the plan. It's all coming together. Abner's going to go up there and it's going to be done. I'm going to be king of peace. Yeah, so that was one. Also, what really was Joab's murder or killing Abner, was it justified? No, it's murder, right? I mean, it was murder.
And David sent him in peace.
Yeah, David had sent Abner away in peace, and he's brought back by deception, and then he's killed under false pretenses. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a faux pas. That's a big hospitality faux pas. Absolutely. Another reason he might want to be separated too is he might think, well, maybe we can still salvage this deal, because remember, all the leaders had already said, we're for David. And so, and who had accompanied Abner down here? Remember? 20 of his men. So they might have ran, but I have a feeling they might have been there, and they could watch all this and say, man, David was really, David didn't have, this isn't David's doing. David was really, when we looked at David, dancing behind the ark, and Michael, it's funny, Michael actually said, what are you doing? You're embarrassed yourself. But it says David was mourning here. I mean, I think David was showing actual emotion, and they're like, so they can go back, these 20 people who were with Abner can go back and say, yeah, This wasn't David's doing. David didn't have this done. And so we don't know for sure, but again, whatever the moment, the end purpose was made clear, because what does it say the people believed? Yeah, they believed that David was clean. You know, David said, I'm clean of it. And it says in here that they were pleased. They were pleased with everything. And we know that this didn't end the possibility of David becoming king. So this didn't, it might have hurt or you know, it might have taken the relationship back, but it didn't end it, because what would happen pretty soon with David with all the tribes? Chapter 5. He's going to become king. He's going to become king. So the end result's still going to be there. The end result's going to be there. Any comments, questions, snarky remarks on our text? I got take-home points. We're not done. Any comments just on the text itself? Pretty straightforward, I think. Speak now. All right, take-home points. Oh, yeah. Right, absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, first take-home point that I have. Human revenge never ends well. Joab sought revenge against Abner for killing his brother. Under the old covenant, if someone murdered someone in your family, what did you have the right to do? Pardon? Right, you could avenge. If someone was innocent and they were murdered by someone, and it was murder, a family member could avenge that death under certain circumstances. Numbers chapter 35, if you want to read it. Numbers chapter 35 explains it. Now, one interesting side note, Hebron is where Joab murdered Abner. Hebron was one of those cities of refuge. So like if you killed someone and they couldn't prove it on you, you could live in one of those cities of refuge, you were fine. But it says he killed him at the side gate. So he killed him before he got in there, thinking he was all right, but he wasn't. So thinking about that, so even in Joab's head, if he thinks, I'm right by doing this, I'm avenging my brother, did the circumstances of Joab's brother's death in 1 Samuel 2, which we talked about, qualify as murder? No, it did not, because again, it's in chapter 2, it talks about it. This Asahel, he is chasing Abner. And Abner's telling him, hey buddy, stop. Go fight someone else, stop. And then he finally, how he kills him, do you remember how he kills him? The back end. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so because it says Asahel runs like a gazelle. So it's basically saying he's going to catch Abner, and Abner's saying, stop, and he doesn't. And instead of Abner just, ticking him and spearing him that way, he's just kind of like self-defense. That's what the text at least looks like to me. And so I don't think he murdered him. Abner was trying not to kill him because remember he said, how will I face your brother Joab if I kill you? So, I mean, he knew. And so, but in our text, we look at Joab, and he went behind David's back. He deceived Abner, said, come on back. And that was murder. That was murder and revenge, and that was wrong. Now for us, when someone's wronged us, or wronged, sometimes they can do something to us, and that's one thing, but if they do something to our family, it's another. Mama bear and the daddy bear come out, and it can be worse. But, someone can wrong us or someone in our family, and man, we can sit there and daydream. We can daydream. Hours, weeks, days, months, years of the moment we get our revenge or they get theirs. We can sit there and think that. I'll get them back. Oh, wait, I will get them back. Or you just wait. You're going to get what's coming to you. You just wait. But see here, the thing is that is human nature. That is kind of the sinful human nature inside of us, but it is not God's way. It is not God's way. In Romans chapter 12, verses 19 through 21, here's the God's way of handling when something's been wrong. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the Scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. And I love this last part. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Now, to us sinful people, that doesn't feel good sometimes. It doesn't feel good seeing someone do something to you and just, and being able to just let it go and let God do it. It just doesn't feel natural. Again, we like to see people get what they deserve. But if that was the case for us, what do we want that then? We want a break, but we don't want to give others a break. But what does God say? God says, leave it to me. God says, someone's wronged you, leave it to me. I will work it out. I will work it out. And as Christians, that's what we're called to do. We're called to do that. Now, eventually, and here's one good thing about God's Word sometimes. Eventually, they get what they deserve. Because in 1 Kings, so this is much later. So this is David's been king, and now Solomon's getting ready to be king, and David's giving advice to Solomon, and our buddy Joab's coming up again. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 5 and 6, David gives these instructions to Solomon. He's giving him advice and instructions. And there's something else. You know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me when he murdered my 2 army commanders, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He pretended it was an act of war, but it was done in a time of peace, staining his belt and sandals with innocent blood. Do with him what you think is best, but, I like this but don't let him grow old and go down to his grave in peace. What's he insinuating to Solomon? Get rid of him. Yeah, because it's no bueno. He's like, don't let him live. He's like, just, because he's, and remember, he's giving him advice. He's giving him advice. He says that. Bonus question on Joab. This one's nowhere in our text. Who did Joab help get rid of for David after David had committed one of his big mistakes? You remember? Uriah. Yep, that's right. Joab was the one that sent Uriah up to the front. Yep. So that was bonus. That wasn't in our text. All right. Second take home. Bad things happen when we leave God out. So in our interactions in our life, bad things happen when we just leave God over there. We got it, God. You just stay over there. We've got this one. Bad things happen. In this text, the Lord's mentioned there. He's mentioned a couple times, but in reference. But he's really kind of noticeably left out of this scripture. In this scripture, we have plotting, we have murder, we have deception, we have casting blame, but no one really is consulting the Lord.
Could that end be an imprecatory prayer that David made?
In my commentary, so in verse 39, the commentary I got was really, it was showing almost a human side of David, like, I can't even handle these guys. Like, I'm just going to have to leave them up to God because they're evil. That's the way my commentaries, all three of them, I think, handled verse 39. It was almost like, man, these men are wicked. I can't even. And it talked about, that showed kind of the human side, because we see, I didn't have it a take home here, but we see a lot of the human side of David here, because I think he's truly mourning over what happens, but also too, he's like throwing his hands up. Man, these guys are bad news, and so I'm not sure, but I think it's noticeable that we don't see God consulted here, because if you read through 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, you will often have David asking the Lord. David consulted the Lord often, but in here we see that absence of both. Yes, Bob?
Joab was called savage, you said earlier in our scripture there. When Joab killed Absalom,
Yeah.
and David did the same thing about mourning and not
Yeah.
You know, and he says, your troops are not like this.
Yeah.
They're gonna think that you're weak,
Yeah.
what has happened here.
Yeah.
You care more about your son than you did about all the soldiers that laid their life down for you.
Absolutely. When you look through,
Well, I just said he was mean in spirit.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Joab was too. But you know, if you,
Joab is what I mean.
yeah, yeah. Right. But if you look throughout Scripture, David had a lot of family issues. He struggled with, you know, he was able to lead a lot, you know, successful, all of his raids and stuff like that. But when he came to family, and this isn't a take-home here, because we're going to be seeing this a lot as we continue through 2 Samuel. But David had issues with dealing with family. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit. But so David, you know, I think we don't see it from any of the parties here. We don't see a consulting from God. Now, I don't know about you, but I often consult God later. I'll have an issue or a problem come up, and Billy's first thing is I'm going to figure this out. Here's this problem. Okay, what caused it? What can I do to fix it? That's Billy's brain first. And then once I beat my head up against the wall and I fail and I fail and I fail, I think, oh, God, what should I do? and you know, and it's not like a bright light or a bulb, but it's almost like, okay, God, I don't know what to do. Can you help me out here? And a lot of times it works out because you know, if it's silly because, you know, what does James say about wisdom? Well, in Proverbs too. If we ask, what are we going to get? Yeah, if we ask for it, we're going to get it. What else? What do we have living inside of us too? The Holy Spirit. So, you know, instead of just trying to do it our own, you know, God's up there like, McFly, McFly. You know, I mean, I feel like he's, you know, doing that to me all the time. But yeah, we just, you know, we need to go to God first. We just need to go to God first. Proverbs chapter 3, and we're almost done, I promise. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. This is one a lot of you probably memorized, or this is a good one to write out. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. And so don't, I'm going to say to myself, don't wait. Don't. Go to God first. Go to God first. Last one. We're almost done. Oh, we're going to make it. Last one. Be patient. God's will ultimately prevails. Just be patient. God's will ultimately prevails. We don't know for certain the motives behind Abner. So we, you know, it seems to me like Abner, because one thing I didn't really talk about, but Abner knew that David was supposed to be king anyways. When he pushed Saul, when he pushed Ishbosheth in there, because, you know, he goes back to the leaders of Israel. He said, hey, you know, David's supposed to be the one that's supposed to be our, you know, uniter and everything. But he had aligned himself with Saul. And he knew David was supposed to be king, but he was fine. But then all of a sudden the balances started to shift, and the house of Saul was going down, down, down. David's going up. And then he gets accused by Ishbosheth of doing something. And so then he's going over. And so we don't know what the motives are, but we know for sure that it was going to happen. You know, God said, you know, God had declared that David was going to be king, so it was going to happen. And it does happen. Here in a few weeks, we're going to look at it. But, you know, Abner's mistakes, Abner's motives behind what he did cost him his life, I think. I mean, that ultimately cost him his life because the way he went about it. You know, and looking at my own life, I've been experienced situations where I tried to force what I thought was best. This is the way it needs to happen. So, I'm going to do what I can to make it happen this way. But ultimately, I'm not called to fix everything. I'm called to really understand God's will and try to live it out and kind of let things shake out sometimes. And that's hard to do, you know, hard to do is sometimes we think we got to fix it, we got to hit, we got to, you know, do whatever we can to fix it. But sometimes it's being faithful, doing what we know God's called us to do, and kind of letting everything shake out. And that's hard, but it's what we're called to do. And so this last passage here, and I'm done, this is a good reminder for myself and others when maybe we get in that situation where we're not really sure what to do, and we're maybe frustrated or whatever, this word right here can help us just kind of deal with it and understand that. In Galatians chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. So basically, he's telling us this is what you do. So let's not get tired of doing what's good. At just the right time, we'll reap a harvest of blessing if we don't get up. Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially those in the family of faith. And so as Christians, everything's not going to go our way. But I think if we just continue to do what we know God's Word calls us to do, and we continue to do good and try to bless one another, and especially here, the family of faith, and just kind of hold on and be patient, I think God's going to work it out.